The appointment of Canada's new Governor General was a move many people saw as a step forward on the path toward reconciliation. Mary Simon has now held the role for nearly 9 months. In that time, Canada has seen a federal election, a global pandemic, and now the largest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. For her thoughts on the role so far and her hopes for the future, we're joined now in our studio by Her Excellency, Mary Simon. What a pleasure to meet you this morning.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. Now, I want to start with the news from the Vatican. Pope Francis has now apologized for the role the Roman Catholic Church played in Canada's residential school system. How did you feel when you heard and saw that from Pope Francis?
Listening to the Indigenous people that are there, it was very emotional. It was an event that I think brought many different emotions to different people, whether they were in Rome or here in Canada. I think the pain and suffering that residential school former students have experienced over many years has come to the forefront again, and this time I think the apology of the Pope is very significant in the context that, you know, we have been talking about reconciliation and moving forward for some time now, and I think this will help the work that we need to do as Indigenous peoples and other Canadians here in Canada.
Now, we know that you have made reconciliation a key priority for you in your role as Governor General. What does success in that area look like to you?
Success looks to me like people living in a country, making the country stronger as a nation, working together, side by side, giving space for different cultures and different identities. And also, the healing needs to happen as well within the country. So in the future, if we can get it to a place where we can work in this way, that to me would be a reconciliation. And hearing our stories, our stories and other people's stories is critical to the success of reconciliation, because reconciliation is a lifelong event. It doesn't happen and stop at any point in our lives. This apology is very significant, but there has to be action behind it. And I think the next step is for the Pope to come here to Canada and apologize directly to the former residential school victims.
What sort of significance will that have?
It's part of the healing process. I think people have lived with this trauma and intergenerational trauma for a very long time, and we have been talking about getting an apology from the Roman Catholic Church for a long time. And the fact that it is happening now allows people to live through this pain and to move forward to create a better life for themselves. And I think part of that is really about living together in a country like Canada, which is a very beautiful country. And I think there's a lot of work we need to do to reconcile the past and the history of the past.
I want to ask you about some of the work that you've done so far. In March, you met with Queen Elizabeth to congratulate her on her Platinum Jubilee, and you told her that history books should be rewritten to reflect the reality of the relationship between the Crown and Indigenous people. How did the Queen respond to that?
She was very open. She had a very curious way of, asking questions, and we talked about the fact that when I went to school, we didn't really learn anything about other Indigenous people in the country. We didn't, even as an Indigenous person living in the Arctic, we never really knew about what went on in other parts of the country. So she is, I think she's very supportive. We didn't get into a deep discussion, but I did tell her that in order for us to teach our young people the truth and the truth of this country, they will be in a better position as they get older to be sensitive and to be understanding of different cultures. So I think it's really important for us to change the history books of Canada to to teach kids the true story, the true history of the country, without, pointing fingers. You can teach students and children what has happened, and this is a reality that we have to face as a nation.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about the recent events that took place on Parliament Hill. There were some calls to have you dissolve Parliament and form a new government without an election. So this highlighted some pretty big misunderstandings about what your role is. You wield that some people call soft influence. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, I can. Yes, there was a lot of misunderstanding. I think, we live in a constitutional democracy, and people elect the government, and they are the only ones that can remove the Prime Minister. And I think that the fact that people thought that I could do that is a misconception. I am the representative of the Queen here in Canada, but my role is apolitical. And what I can do in my role is bring this conversation to the forefront. Like, my mandate is partly to deal with the reconciliation issue of the country. And many people across the country have indicated to me that they're ready for this. Reconciliation is not an Indigenous issue, it's a Canadian issue. And it's not just up to Indigenous people to talk to each other about it. It's about talking to me, or you talking to me, or I'm talking to you about who I am and what I do, and giving that space and understanding and respect.
I think that's the key word too, right? Giving each other the space to have those conversations and to really listen to each other. Now, you mentioned travel. You haven't been able to do the extensive travel that you were probably anticipating because of everything that's going on. But a little bit of travel, you represented Canada in Germany, I understand, and on your visit to the Middle East in March, you met with members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and you thanked the governments of the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar for helping bring Canadians and Afghans out of Kabul during the global evacuation effort in Afghanistan. How do you see Canada's role on the world stage right now, particularly in light of the current war in Ukraine?
Canada has a very significant role as part of the Commonwealth. I think there is a lot of cooperation happening, and there's a lot of discussion about what more we can do as a country. And I can see how Canada is an integral player. And when I was in the Middle East, I did talk to UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait. And we talked about increased collaboration in discussing what diplomacy is and how we can bring together countries to work together before there is a conflict, to try and avoid the conflicts that we see around the world. But it's a big responsibility. But I always believe that you have to start somewhere, and there is already a lot of discussion about this, and hopefully I can help with that process. And I really believe that with Ukraine, it's an extremely difficult period for the people of Ukraine, and I'm very saddened by what's happening, but I think as a country, even in terms of humanitarian aid, there is a lot more that each of us can do. So I'm hoping that we will be able to provide more support to Ukrainians.
I want to ask you now about the role of the Commonwealth. We know that the Bahamas has removed the Queen as its head of state. Jamaica and Belize are said to be considering a similar move. How do you see the Crown's role changing here in Canada and in the Commonwealth really in the years ahead?
Well, what I'm focused on right now is my work. And being Queen's representative allows me to do my work. And I'm very honored to have been appointed as the Governor General for Canadians. And I really believe that I need to focus on that. Constitutional democracies change from time to time, and even in our country, it has evolved a lot. I remember the Constitution when it was brought back from England in 1980, 81. So there is an evolution that happens in each of our countries. So I can't really predict the future because I think there's a mixed feeling in Canada about the monarchy. But my role right now is to focus on what my mandate is over the next 5 years.
I'm going to quote you now, if you wouldn't mind. I'm going to read something that you have said. Here it is. I was taught by my parents to live in both worlds as a non-Aboriginal person and as an Indigenous person does in the North. I've learned over the years that the values of both cultures are equally important. So my question to you is, what can all Canadians learn from your experience living in both of these worlds?
For me, it was teaching myself how to balance my lifestyle, how to live in a world where I truly identify as an Indigenous person, having grown up in the Arctic, and then having a father that was non-Native allowed me to learn another culture. But my true identity is still as an Inuk. But at the same time, I balance that with the other side of myself. And I think what's really important about that is that you learn to respect and understand different cultures. And I really believe that I do understand not just Indigenous cultures, but also other cultures in Canada. We live in a very diverse country. Diversity and inclusion is part of the work that I'm going to be doing, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done there as well. So I think it's really putting yourself in a place where you don't judge. You don't judge just because somebody is of a different culture, a different language, you know, that kind of identity. It's being non-judgmental.
Your Excellency, thank you for being here at your morning this morning, and thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, take care. And you can watch our full conversation with Her Excellency, and you can watch it on our YouTube channel.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.